We've got the first step is to get the numbers from our trial balance onto the pro forma. Okay, you've set up your pro forma, you've got your income statement, your statement of financial position. We're going to get the numbers from the trial balance onto the pro forma. If you look in front of you, you'll see on the trial balance there's a figure in there for income tax, okay, which you'll notice is a credit. Okay, it's a credit of $800. And there's also a balance on there for deferred taxation. Both of those have got the word tax in there. There's the clue, that's the tax bit that we're dealing with. Okay? The credit for deferred tax is $2,600. We're going to take those numbers, we're going to put them onto our pro forma. What are we going to do next? We're going to account for the current year charge. The current year charge, if you look at note 4, you'll see the tax charge for the current year is $19.4 million. Because we're making an adjustment, we need to do the double entry for that. We need to do a debit and a credit. And we'll deal with that. Okay? And then finally, deferred one is deferred tax. I've said that every single time. Anyway, it's just a good line, isn't it? Anyway, the deferred one is deferred tax. That's where you need to do a little bit of a calculation to work out what the deferred tax charge is. Okay? So let's just take it through now. We'll set up the pro forma. And in true Blue Peter style, here's one I prepared earlier. Start off with the income statement. We're just looking at the income tax expense. We're just doing the extract. We're not doing a full question 2. Okay. So we've got.
Apologies.
I'll start it, so I'll finish. We've got the income tax expense. Non-current liability is deferred tax. Current liability is taxation. Okay, so the first thing we're going to do, what we're going to do, trial balance figures onto the pro forma. The trial balance figures. We've got a balance on there for taxation, the income tax expense, it's $800. That is going to get written off as part of the income tax expense for the year. Okay, if there's a balance on your trial balance for taxation current year, it can only be as a result of an under or over provision. Can't be anything else. It's only 2 things that go through the tax account. One is the provision, one is the amount of tax you've paid. If the tax provision is the same as the amount you've paid, you've got no balance on the account. So if you have got a balance on the account, it can only be an under or over provision. What they usually do though is they tell you in the notes. And it says in the notes that it's an under or over provision. It doesn't tell you whether it's under or over, but it's a credit, so we're going to credit it to the income tax expense account. Okay? The deferred tax liability is in there at $2,600, so we'll pop that in at $2,600. Okay. What we'll also do is make those lines a little bit thinner. Okay. That's number 1 done. TB onto pro forma. Current year tax charge. This is the easiest one. Okay. The current year tax charge. It says $19.4 million. Okay. It's a debit and a credit. You don't really need to know it's a debit and a credit. It's the tax charge, the income tax expense, plus $19.4 million. It's a liability, it's the tax we're going to have to pay. It's $19.4 million as a current liability. You've done the double entry, debit and credit. Okay. You've done the second step. You've already got a couple of marks towards your total. You're working towards your 50 to pass the exam. You've got a couple of marks in there in the bag already, and you knew they were going to ask you that question. Finally, deferred tax. I say this is where we need to do a little bit of a calculation, not a huge one, but it tells us in the notes, you'll see there, that the timing differences are 27 million's worth. So let's do a little working. Working 1. Deferred tax. We've got 27 million's worth of timing differences. It tells us, and it always will, that the tax rate is 25%. That's going to give us a total liability of 6750. That's the liability that you need to put on your statement of financial position as a non-current liability. Okay, so 6750 onto your deferred tax liability. What I usually do is I put the 6750 in there, and I've got the mark. Okay, I've got the mark for getting the correct liability in there. But what I now need to do is get my double entry right. Okay, I've got a balance on there of 2,600. I need to increase that by 4,150. If I'm increasing my deferred tax liability, I'm increasing the tax charge. Okay, now you can think of it in terms of debit and credit. You don't need to do it as debits and credits. If I'm plussing the deferred tax, I'm plussing the income tax expense. Okay. Now, if you like debits and credits, and to be fair, who doesn't? Okay. We are debiting the income tax expense with 4,150. We are crediting the liability. We're building up the liability. Okay. So when we add all that up, that gives us a total charge for the year of 22,750. And if we decided to mark it, put some marks on what we get for doing this, we have scored 1.5 marks for doing the income tax expense, 1 mark, would you, but 1 whole mark for putting 19,400 and the information's in the question, you get a mark for doing that, and there's another 1.5 for getting your deferred tax liability right. You've scored 4 marks there. 1, 2, 3 steps to get 4 marks. Okay, another 46, you've passed the exam. However, there are your 4 marks. Okay, so the big question that we want to be asking ourselves right at the end is, can we pass the F7 exam? Yes, we can.
Falls on me just to say a few final words. I was thinking about state. What state am I? What state do I want you to be in? Knackered, tired, I've learnt a few lessons, but apart from being tired, humble really, I think. Kaplan's got talent, you know, and I'm just absolutely blown away, you know, really, you know, by the talent that they've all displayed. And the way in which you've all sort of thrown yourselves into it, just absolutely fantastic. And remember, we're not trying to change you. You know, we're giving you ideas, some tips, some hints. You can use them all, use none of them. You know, it's up to you. Try them, experiment, see what works, see what doesn't. I've learnt so much from these first 2 days then with you. And this is a great way to approach everything, isn't it? What's the purpose? Because remember, it's not about getting the material over, it's about what they take away with them. Yeah? State of mind, how do you want them to feel? Those sorts of fundamental messages. So I hope you've all got something out of it. So I'm going to say a few thank yous. Thanks to Stuart, who you know, the architect, Minister of Magic, you know, he's the technical brains behind it. Okay, so thanks very much. Thanks to our vivacious team of facilitators, John, Mr. Memory Man, Andy, Chris, and Peter's trying to hide, he's shy, but he's there.
1 minute.
1 minute. Really, biggest thanks to all of you, you know. We could do that thing that Stuart said, but instead of putting both hands, give yourself a pat on the back. I can't stretch. But great thanks, fantastic way of throwing yourselves into it, really appreciate it. So thanks so much.